Welcome to sunny Buenos Aires. We're starting our tour today. Actually, our tour guide was born in Argentina but grew up in Boston, and if you can believe it, he's also a Red Sox fan. But we're going to take a look around and perhaps see some areas that you may not go to on tour. We're right across the street from the Estación Retiro, and right behind me is La Torre de las Ingleses. It was a gift to Argentina from the British people in the early 1900s, and it is kind of reminiscent of Faneuil Hall in some respects. Those of you familiar with Boston, we're going to give you a shot of it. Our cab driver, he calls it Little Big Ben. And of course, during the Falklands War, because it was given by the British, there were some people that wanted to tear it down. But fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and we now have this nice monument here in an area that there's some 40 acres. It's probably the largest area behind us, not behind me, but behind Rodin, that they are looking to possibly sell off. It's owned by the government, and if they were to sell the 40 acres, Claudio, our cab driver, was saying it would go for somewhere around $500 million. So just to give you an idea, and some 26 million, around about 26 million tourists to Argentina every year. And when you consider Disney World gets about 25 million a year, you have some idea of how important tourism is to Argentina. So we're going to take a look at La Torre de las Ingleses, and then we're going to continue our look around Buenos Aires. Right across the street from the tower that we just showed you, we have a monument to the Argentinians that were killed during the Falklands War. And you can see all the names there, including one of the ships that the British sunk. It was an ex-American ship owned by the Argentinians, and I think about 350 Argentinians were killed in that one incident there off the Falklands. So it's kind of an interesting area here with all the names. And in fact, just up we can't see it, it's out of camera range, but we came across some sort of movie or TV commercial shoot. But they didn't need us, so we're going to keep moving on and see what else we can find around Buenos Aires. We're now in an area called Puerto Madero, and you can see these are all the old warehouses that were rat-infested and abandoned warehouses that have now been completely renovated over the last 15 years, and there's all kinds of restaurants and shops in them. Just a terrific area here. You can see what they call the Women's Bridge behind us, and then in the distance there's also a tall ship. One of the things they did here as well is leave some of the original cranes to give it the flavor of what this area must have been like many years ago. Claudio, our guide, told us an interesting story that there was a very wealthy man that owned some restaurants here, and there's a bit of controversy now because he was having problems with his restaurants, and so what he did is he closed the restaurants and he donated them. And in this very exclusive area, there's now just a homeless soup kitchen there, which some of the people are not happy about. But I'm sure the people that take advantage of it are certainly happy about it. But it's a fascinating area, and one I wish we had plenty of time to go around. There's some terrific restaurants here and some shops, and as you can see, quite a bit to do. We're just walking along one of these storefronts here, and you can see they're preparing the cows. They're doing these decorations. I'm sure you've seen these around cities around the world. And they have the cow parade in Buenos Aires in 2006, and you can see the beautifully decorated statues of cows over here in Puerto Madero. Here's another look at the, looks like to be the tennis playing cow. Love the colors, very colorful. They really jump out at you. Here's a better look at one of those cows out here that's already been put on display. And then in the distance, you can see what is a nightclub that's reminiscent of the Sydney Opera House. Apparently, that's one of the hot nightclubs here in Buenos Aires. You never know what you're going to find there. And then another look down the other end of Puerto Madero, where you can see the warehouses that have been transformed into this magnificent area with a promenade all along the waterfront. One of the really eerie areas here in Buenos Aires is just over my shoulder. It's an area that when they were doing some excavation, they discovered all these bones from people that disappeared during the dictatorship of 76 till about 1982. In fact, there's like a giant outline like you would sometimes see at a crime scene, and then there's all kinds of little signs there memorializing what went on here. So if you take a look at it, people often stop and they cross themselves and say a prayer as well. So we're going to kind of look across the street now. This is really an eerie sight here when you see it, with all the different signs and the outline. And in fact, right here on the pillar coming down as well, you'll see a monument to the hands out raised to the people that were tortured and killed and buried here. This is one of the more unforgettable sights that I've ever seen. We're in an area right near La Boca, and behind me is a replica of the house of Admirante Brown, Admiral Brown, who helped start the Argentinian Navy. And by some accounts, he might have been British, he might have been Irish, we're not really sure. Also just found out an interesting fact that apparently it has been suggested that Buenos Aires is the home of the only kosher McDonald's in the world. So we're going to have to Google that and see how accurate that is. One other fact we were just told by Claudio, our driver, and I wish he had told me this before we started driving around, is that Argentina is the most dangerous place on the road as far as fatalities. And I'm not even sure if I think it might even be Buenos Aires is the most dangerous city for driving. So maybe I'll walk in the street instead. We're in an area called La Boca. In fact, the famous football team here, the soccer team in Buenos Aires, Boca Juniors, is just over there a little ways where the stadium is. Pretty much a mecca, just like the stadium that we saw when we were in Rio. But as you can see, here's a magnificent piece of architecture that's in the process of being restored. In the La Boca area, you'll find these corrugated fronts to the houses and the colorful, all the different colorful painting of it. And then they also have the raised sidewalks because the river used to always come up and flood, and so they got wise and raised the sidewalks. So it's an interesting area right here that you can imagine, if and when it is fully and properly restored, will be absolutely magnificent.